So with WandaVision wrapping up on Disney Plus in a pretty good way, I hope, it stands to reason that a lot of us park fans might start wondering how and when they might start integrating this property into the parks in some fashion. And that's what this video is for. So stay tuned for more info on that. Howdy, hey citizens of Westview, right here, and today let's talk about integrating WandaVision into the Disney parks. Now for this premise, it's mostly going to be with California Adventure since that's where I'm based, but keep in mind that this idea could technically work at any of the Disney parks that have like a Hollywood area. So Hollywood Studios, Disney World if they can get the rights to do it, or at, well, Disney Studios Park in Paris. But I mean, mostly pitching this for DCA and maybe down to a thing for down to Disney, which we'll get into in a little bit. So with that out of the way, let's dive on into our first idea, starting with... So if you were fortunate enough to go to Oogie Boogie Bash last year, you might have been lucky enough to get into a special Halloween Maze Light version of Redwood Creek Challenge Trail called Villains Grove, which featured a lot of effects, lighting, projections to transform the entire area into a very sinister and villain-filled area, which I think was really well done and amazing, especially for not having any characters or anything. And it definitely got the creepy vibes going. So why not expand upon that more for the parks? And considering WandaVision has a lot of roots in horror, why not play that up for a special Halloween walkthrough, not maze, experience for Oogie Boogie Bash? I mean, we already have Avengers Campus coming to the park, so it'd be nice to have something for special at the Bash for the park. And they have plenty of space to do it in the former Timon parking lot space that they still have until they build the Avengers e-ticket one day, hopefully. So let's put it there and have the entrance be from the trolley gates inside the Avengers headquarters building at the campus, which is where the trolley would go backstage to get into the barn. But you have that special walkway that goes around it with themed walls and foliage and stuff hiding the backstage elements that they don't want to reveal, leading to this new tent or facility, wherever they want to make for it, to house it. And as far as the aesthetics, it could look like a sword base that's outside the hex in the show, or it could like you're in Westview with either a lot of black and white theming and a recreation of either Agatha's house or even Wanda's house. But either one could work. And so once you're inside the house, why not have various scenes recreating the creepy moments from the show, like the awkward dinner scene in the first episode, or Agatha's basement from the last few episodes, or the Salem Witch Trial, which was done in reverse, granted, but it could still be very creepy just to have like a woman shrieking at the top of her lungs. And then why not have like Dead Vision show up in the Halloween scene, and have the outside of town scene with all the people that barely move or don't move at all and such. And that would be a fun way to play up the creepy part of the show without going like bloody and gory like Scary Farm or Universal would. Granted, this would require Marvel's approval, considering they might be picky about how their characters are depicted in the park. So that's up to them, but that's just the basic pitch. Leading us to... So yeah, this might seem weird at first, but hear me out. I'd pitch this more as a version of the 50s Primetime Cafe from Hollywood Studios, which, if you haven't been, highly recommend. For one, it has great food, great theming, great atmosphere. Some of the best in that park, pre-Star Wars and Toy Story. But anyway, I would pitch this to replace Disney Junior with some new kid-friendly experience being added to the backlot space to make up for it. And this also could work in theory in downtown Disney if they wanted to do it too, somewhere like in ESPN or somewhere. But that's just up to them. I'd prefer to have it closer to Avengers Campus just because more theming and dining, and that way it can connect to the land a little bit. So what would this look like from the outside? So the facade, we would see the removal of all the theater aesthetics, considering there's like a million of theaters on that Hollywood Boulevard just by itself. With that, or the PhilharMagic entrance, or the animation entrance, or the Hyperion entrance. There's a little too many theater entrances in one land. So spice it up a little and have it look like an old-time diner, with some SX tying it into WandaVision, and then have the name be the Westview Cafe or the Westview Diner, something that's very reminiscent of the old-timey eateries from that era. But once you're inside, you'll have different rooms themed to different decades throughout the show. So you have a room based off the 50s, a room for the 60s, a room for the 70s, a room for the 80s, a room for the 90s, but ignore the 2000s just because it's a little too modern to have in a theme park. That's trying to be immersive and very story-driven. But beside that, you have a lot of food recreating like what was popular at those times, so it's not just normal burgers and chicken and stuff. Like it could be have its own shakes and other stuff. Also, that stuff that's different from Flo's Viet Cafe. That way, you don't have too much comparison with that. And it probably would have to be a table service just to get the full immersion effect. And if you're wondering about the transition scenes between the rooms, you just have the doorways act as the barriers between them, like in episode 8 when they entered different scenes from Wanda's life, but just recreations of different eras of television. And each table would have a TV playing clips from the show, in addition to any retro TV shows that they can get the rights to show clips for, like at Primetime Cafe. And you might want to even include some of the ads too, just for fun little nods and see if the people are paying attention. But yeah, nothing too fancy, but still will be a fun experience. Plus you can have character dining if you wanted to incorporate Wanda, Agatha, Monica. Wow, there's a lot of us. And then also maybe Vision if they ever wanted to bring him into the parks. That'd be a great place to have him. And yeah, I know this is just a restaurant, but it'd just be a fun little thing that they can add. So there's a lot of ways that this can work, if they wanted to. But moving on to the final big idea. So this is gonna be, for this pitch, it would be a replacement for the Muppet Vision / Mickey's Bar Magic Theater that's there right now. And what it would be a WandaVision 3D attraction, poking a little fun at the past of this theater, but also being its own thing where it's a combination live actor 4D projection and live action show going on, like Terminator 240, if you ever got to see that at Universal. Something within the style, but unique enough so it's not an exact copy, and adjusted for the space that they have to work with. So for the facade of this experience, you would still have the current theater facade that they have for PhilharMagic, just adjust a little bit with a new digital projection for WandaVision with magic going by every so often. Kind of like what it does now. But then once you enter under the marquee, you see an entirely new enclosed space with sections divided off. To the left, you got the entrance for the show. To the right, you have a seating area for award winners that's closed off and maintaining the theme of Hollywoodland a little bit some way. And then you also have a pathway around that to a stroller parking area behind that side of the theater where the exit is. And then if you turn left, that'll take you into the queue and lobby for the show. So it looked like an old style abandoned theater still, but for the ticket booth. But once you pass that into the hallway, that'll look like a modern sword base, like in the show. Taking a little bit of influence from the first Thor movie with like a tube tunnel leading you into the main lobby, which will be a semi-recreation of the sword base from the show. Not that it's outside the hex, but designed to be a little bit more comfy considering you are going to be waiting there for a while. But it will have TVs from the ceiling like the old Muppet Vision show used to have. Rest in peace. Which will show various clips connecting to the show, from the show even. But will feature new unique clips like special ads and special little messages and stuff going by, just to play with you guys a little bit as you're waiting. So for the pre-show, it would give the backstory of what's happening where this anomaly appeared in, let's say, West Los Angeles. And Wanda seems to be at the center of it, with Vision somehow alive. Some weird person that keeps calling herself Agnes has talked to her, but they have no previous records of who she is. And this will all be hosted by Dr. Darcy, Agent Wu, and potentially Monica and Hayward, just to tie into the conflict that will later pop up at the end of the show. And once the pre-show is done, you'll be asked to enter the theater to get your full mission briefing about how they're going to be handling the anomaly from Monica. And this will lead you into the theater, which will be fully remodeled to look like an old decrepit theater. And this will sadly see the removal of the Statler and Waldorf balconies from Muppet Vision, unfortunately, just to better tie the room all together with all that empty space that wouldn't be used for something. And this will also see a new permanent stage takeover where the Penguins were and the stage that they built for the Frozen sing-along. but now more permanent and not plywood looking stage. So that way it looks like it was meant to be there. And once you guys are all seated, the cast member dressed as a sword agent will give you the safety spiel about being prepared, and then put on your protective glasses so that way you don't fall victim to the effects of the anomaly, hence their purpose. And then once that's out of the way, Monica will come out and start the show essentially by giving you a briefing, but then all of a sudden you get like warning lights all of a sudden as the anomaly expands and takes over the theater and us along with it, and while Monica goes missing all of a sudden. From there we'll enter a 4-act structure for the show where the first 3 will represent different eras of television, so the first one being a 50s or 60s related scene, and then moving on to the 70s or 80s, and then 90s or 2000s, just to give it more rewritability, more reasons to come back to see what the other shows are. And this one you use new, unique stories that are different from the show, so that way it's just not a carbon copy paste of stories that they use in the show. So that way it's own unique acts. You probably won't be able to see the twins, unfortunately. This will have more room to play with other tropes of sitcoms throughout the decades and have a little bit of fun with it too. And at the end of each of the first 3 acts, you'll see some sort of break in the immersion, like something going on, like you hear Wu going over the radio calling for Wanda, until the end of the 3rd act, where all heck breaks loose and we get into the big bad battle with Agatha, with WandaVision, Monica teaming up to take on the forces of Agatha, and potentially White Vision if they want to include that, and you just have to have that set up in the pre-show and the queue a little bit. And big fight ensues using live actors, projections, lasers, the whole shebang, ending with the theater exploding because of their fight as a tribute to Muppet Vision. And ultimately Vision has to make the ultimate sacrifice again to get the heart pounding. So at the end of the day, good triumphs over evil. Sword takes away Agatha, and White Vision's defeated. Wanda, Monica share a moment together, and the show ends. They thank us all for putting up with all of this chaos and ask us to exit to the right, exit to the theater, into the backlot area of Hollywoodland, enjoying the rest of our day with a special new themed exit with some fun glitches in the exit area to make it look like the anomalies had an effect that didn't stop. And with that, that brings a close to this Fantasmic idea and where we put it. Hopefully you guys like these ideas. I know these seem a little random. I mean, these are just fun ideas. I don't mean these to be serious, but if Disney wants to build these, you have my full consent. You can go ahead and build it. I relinquish any rights to these, even though you already own these characters and stuff. And what about you guys? If you have any ideas, feel free to comment down below. I'd love to hear them, especially if you can figure out how to turn WandaVision into a ride, because that feels like it would be a little bit complicated. So until next time, hope you guys like this video, and make sure to comment, like, subscribe, do all the YouTube jazz, and I hope to see you all real soon.